There are certain creations in television history that feel less like fictional inventions and more like shared cultural experiences, as if they belong equally to audiences everywhere. These rare figures manage to cross linguistic boundaries, cultural differences, and generational gaps without losing any part of what makes them special. Among these timeless creations stands Mr. Bean, a character whose appeal has remained remarkably intact for over 3 decades. From the busy streets of London to the vibrant communities of Lagos, and from the fast-paced life of Tokyo to the multicultural energy of Toronto, viewers have consistently found themselves drawn to the same simple yet captivating sight: a man in a modest brown suit awkwardly navigating a world he never quite seems to understand. What makes this character so enduring is not just the humor, but the universality of that humor. People laugh at his confusion, at the chaos that seems to follow him wherever he goes, and at the often absurd gap between what he intends to do and what actually unfolds. His actions are unpredictable, his logic unconventional, and yet, somehow, deeply relatable. Over time, however, beneath all the laughter and entertainment, something else quietly began to take shape. A subtle curiosity started to grow among viewers. It was not loud or urgent, but persistent. Fans discussed it across online forums, shared theories in comment sections, and revisited it during casual late-night conversations. It was a question that lingered for years, one that the creators themselves never clearly addressed, until recently. After 31 years, Rowan Atkinson has finally confirmed what countless fans had long suspected. This revelation does not simply add a new layer to the character. It fundamentally changes the way audiences interpret every episode, every gesture, and every silent moment. Suddenly, scenes that once seemed purely comedic take on a different tone, inviting viewers to reconsider what they thought they understood. To truly appreciate the significance of this confirmation, it becomes essential to understand the man behind the performance. Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born in January 1955 in a quiet town located in County Durham, in the northeast of England. As the youngest of 4 brothers, he grew up in a household that had no ties to the entertainment world. His father worked as both a farmer and a businessman, while his mother dedicated her time to raising the family. It was a life defined by stability and simplicity, an upbringing that, in many ways, could be described as entirely ordinary. There were no early signs suggesting that this young boy would one day become a global comedy icon. What did stand out, however, was his struggle with a stutter. From an early age, speaking was not something that came easily to him. Words that others could express effortlessly often became obstacles he had to carefully navigate. Constructing sentences required concentration, and speaking in public could feel overwhelming, almost like stepping into uncertain territory. At a time when speech difficulties were not widely understood or met with empathy, he learned to be cautious about how and when he communicated. Where many might have withdrawn under such circumstances, Atkinson responded in a remarkably different way. Instead of focusing on what he found difficult, he began to explore what did not require words at all. He became highly observant, noticing how a simple look could communicate more effectively than a full sentence, and how body language could tell a complete story without a single spoken word. While others were developing their verbal wit, he was quietly mastering a form of expression that was far more universal. Academically, he proved to be highly capable. He pursued electrical and electronic engineering at Newcastle University, successfully completing his degree before continuing his studies at Oxford, where he earned a master's degree at Queen's College. It was during his time at Oxford that a significant shift occurred, one that would ultimately shape the direction of his life. Driven by curiosity rather than ambition, he joined the university's dramatic society as well as an experimental theater club. He was not seeking fame or recognition. Instead, he was simply exploring something new. What he discovered in that environment was transformative. He realized that he had the ability to make people laugh without relying heavily on spoken language. A carefully timed facial expression, a subtle movement that contradicted a character's apparent intention, or an exaggerated physical reaction could trigger genuine, uncontrollable laughter. This ability came naturally to him, and audiences recognized its brilliance almost instantly. It was also during this time that he met Richard Curtis, a writer who would become one of his most important creative partners. Curtis possessed a sharp and articulate sense of humor, excelling in crafting clever dialogue. In contrast, Atkinson's strength lay in physical performance and nonverbal expression. Together, they formed a perfectly balanced partnership. One brought words to life with wit and precision, while the other could captivate an audience without saying anything at all. This collaboration would eventually lead to the creation of some of the most beloved works in British comedy. After leaving Oxford, Atkinson's professional career began to take shape. By the late 1970s, he had already made a name for himself on British television, particularly through a satirical sketch show that highlighted his originality. He demonstrated versatility, excelling in political satire and convincingly portraying figures of authority. It became increasingly clear that he was not limited to physical comedy alone. Nevertheless, there remained a strong pull toward quieter, more visual form of humor, one that did not rely on language. The idea that would eventually evolve into Mr. Bean did not appear overnight. Instead, it developed gradually over time. Both Atkinson and Curtis shared a deep appreciation for the great silent film comedians of the early cinema era. Figures such as Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and Jacques Tati had already demonstrated that it was possible to connect with audiences on a profound level without relying on dialogue. Their work proved that the human body could serve as its own language, and that silence could be just as expressive, if not more so, than words. Inspired by these pioneers, Atkinson and Curtis set out to create a character who could bring that same timeless approach to a modern television audience. The result was a figure deliberately stripped of conventional identity. He had no clearly defined background, no established career, no family connections, and no personal history to anchor him. Instead, he existed entirely in the present moment, encountering each situation as though it were completely new. Even his name, Mr. Bean, was intentionally devoid of meaning, reinforcing his universal appeal. His appearance became just as iconic as his behavior. He drove a small, aging Mini, secured with a padlock, and wore the same narrow brown suit in every episode. His method of communication relied almost entirely on facial expressions, body language, and occasional, barely audible words. This simplicity became his greatest strength. When Mr. Bean first appeared on television on New Year's Day in 1990, the response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Audiences in Britain embraced the character almost instantly. Soon after, viewers across Europe discovered him, and it did not take long for the rest of the world to follow. Within a relatively short period, the show was being broadcast in more than 190 countries. Its global success was made possible by its minimal reliance on dialogue, allowing it to transcend language barriers with ease. Yet even as laughter echoed across continents, something else began to take shape. Observant viewers started noticing subtle details within the character's behavior. At first, these observations were small and easily overlooked. But as more episodes were released, those details became harder to ignore. Mr. Bean's actions were not simply odd in the way that comedic characters are often odd. There was something uniquely distinctive about his behavior. He did not approach everyday situations as someone who was forgetful or absent-minded. Instead, he seemed to interact with the world as though he had no prior experience with it at all. Simple tasks became complex challenges, and familiar environments appeared entirely new to him. It was as if he was encountering everything for the very first time, responding not with confusion born of forgetfulness, but with curiosity born of complete unfamiliarity. And so, the character that felt like it belonged to everyone continued to captivate audiences across generations. People from different cultures and backgrounds found themselves laughing at the same moments, drawn together by a shared sense of humor. From London to Lagos, from Tokyo to Toronto, the laughter never faded. Yet beneath that shared joy, the same quiet question continued to circulate, growing stronger with each passing year. Now, after more than 3 decades, that long-standing curiosity has finally been addressed. Rowan Atkinson's confirmation does more than answer a question. It reshapes the entire narrative. It invites audiences to look beyond the surface-level comedy and consider a deeper interpretation of the character. Every movement, every reaction, and every silent pause takes on new meaning. In the end, Mr. Bean remains exactly what he has always been, a character who belongs to everyone. But now, with this newfound understanding, he also becomes something more, a figure whose simplicity conceals a depth that audiences are only just beginning to fully appreciate.